Hello, everyone. This is Yu Tsai. Welcome to Let's Talk, and in continuation of celebrating Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. Can they shorten that just to make it easier?
It's a mouthful, right?
It's a total
I barely remember the acronym.
At first is Asian American Pacific Heritage Month, and then they change it to Asian Pacific American Heritage Month. But it doesn't matter. We're celebrating it. And today, my guest is my longtime friend and colleague, beauty director, content creator, writer, and editor, Ying Chu. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me. You look so beautiful and uniformly lit. I'm trying to control a blind here. It's just not quite as fresh as you have your setup.
I am speaking to a beauty director, so I got to make sure I look good for the talk.
What are you using on your skin? Because it's really glowy.
You know what? I just use lotion. I don't have a skincare routine. Isn't that funny? Everybody's like, what's your skincare routine? It's called Asian.
That's a good leg up on non-Asian.
Yes. Well, first of all, tell us where you're at right now.
So I am in upstate New York. We are isolating here. Been out of New York City since March 13th. So God, it's coming up on 3 months. Where are you?
So I'm in Los Angeles right now. Yeah. So this is your home.
This is my home. We live in Brooklyn most of the time, but this is a house that we built many years ago and used to, come a couple times a month for a weekend here and there. And now we're here full time.
That's amazing. And you're a mom with 2 kids, 2 of them.
Yes, they are. We have a family down the road that is kind of like our isolation, crew. So the kids and my husband are there now. So that's why it's so nice and quiet. If they come back, you will hear them undoubtedly.
How are you going through this time being the full-time mom and full-time teacher at the same time?
I think all the other parents out there, you're just kind of learning as you go. It's never perfect. Not that parenthood ever is. Any sense being someone who's Asian and who's really kind of type A to really feed into the stereotype, all of these things that you really try to control before that you could kind of have some control over before you have kids, you have to just completely let go. And I think that with our older child, our son, my husband and I still try to kind of keep things and keep control of certain things, and that made things really hard. And with the second one, it was just kind of okay, we're gonna let that go, and it just was a more pleasant experience. So you kind of just learn as you go. And I think in this experience that we're all sharing universally now, it is just letting go of perfection, not that ever existed, but letting go of that and kind of taking it as it comes. So we're okay.
Well, I know. Well, your kids are mixed race, so I want to talk about that because there are now Asian American, American Asian, however way you want to look at it, there are mixed race. And what is your plan? How do you raise a mixed race kid?
So I think, I feel I should start or at least become part of a mixed race parent support group of some sort. Because I really think that this is a conversation that I have with myself daily, that I have with my husband, that I have with my family. I'm of Chinese background and I was born in Shanghai, but grew up in Vancouver and eventually made my way over to New York. But my family, my parents, my sister are still in Vancouver. And my husband's family, he's Caucasian and, of mixed kind of European background, and his family is here. So a lot of our family time is spent with his side of the family. So as much as I think, my intention and our intention is to raise them, with a lot of exposure to both of our backgrounds and traditions and cultures, it's really hard. As much as I would like for them to be at least bilingual, that's also really hard. My husband obviously doesn't speak Chinese, and my Mandarin is terrible. So don't try. But my Mandarin is terrible. I grew up speaking Shanghainese at home, which is an interesting but very different dialect than Mandarin, and really there's not great use for it outside of Shanghai. but I think, it just brings a cultural element to your home and an understanding of the culture when you engage that way. It's just, to add that to the long list of things that you want to accomplish as a parent. And as a working parent, it's just like falls kind of low. So I don't think it's too late for them. My son is 4.5, my daughter's 2.
Oh, they're so young.
They're
They
so
don't even
young.
know. They don't even know what mixed race is yet.
No. But my son is definitely, he would say to me, I would say like, oh, your grandparents are Chinese. I'm Chinese. You're Chinese too. And it was really recently that he actually said to me, I'm Chinese too. Because at first he was like, no, what are you even talking about? Even though, I think any sort of idea of race or skin tone or background like that is just like a really not something they're thinking about at such a young age. But as he's in school and kind of learning about similarities and differences and just about people, he's really thinking about how to process that and like where he kind of fits
Identity.
in.
They're trying to find their identity, and it's interesting because I think the new generations of Asians they definitely embody their heritage in a more organic way than maybe you and I grew up. Because when I came to the United States when I was 12 years old, and being Asian was the last thing I want to be identified with, because we try to just blend in so the bullies don't find you, and you just want to blend in. You just want to disappear in a crowd so that you didn't get spotted out and become a target. And now, and perhaps because we both live on the coastal side of the states, and you're in East Coast, I'm in the West Coast, and it's much more diversity in all school systems out here, that I don't think there's a single school without Asian people in it now. But
Right.
I know growing up it was difficult because I was the very few Asian in our school, and it was predominantly Hispanic, and because my dad's a farmer, so we live in a farm county area in Chino, and so that was very different. And for me, I always wonder, like, for kids this generation, when they grow up, because it's so diverse now, do they lose that touch of holding on to their heritage? As our parents, I'm sure, I don't know about your parents, but my parents were always like, don't forget you're Chinese, don't forget you're Asian, always, every single day, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, family, I think, is for Asian families, for most families, I think like family comes first, and that's something they want to hang on to. I have I grew up with one sibling, but both of my parents, my mother is from a family with 4 other siblings. My dad is the youngest of 8, so it's like a big clan, and it was very much just like about family gatherings and about celebrating tradition and celebrating culture. And I think that I grew up in Vancouver, and that is actually a very densely Asian population.
Yes.
And regardless, I still think that for my generation, I was in school in the 80s and 90s, late 80s and 90s, and it was very much about assimilation. Even though there were plenty of other Asian kids in my class, and especially in like the lower grades, it was very much about fitting in with everyone else, about blending in, about being even though I was in Canada, being Western and being American, being Americanized. It was all about American pop culture. I mean, I think such a huge piece of that is that what we were exposed to. Obviously, there was no social media, there was no internet. So what you were seeing was magazine covers, what was on TV, what was in movie theaters, and the musicians of the time. And it was very, there. Like, I'm trying to think of the Asian American women who were in media or just visible at the time, and it was like when I was really young, it was like Connie Chung. When I was a little bit older, you had like Lucy Liu came into the picture in terms of like more popular culture, but there were a few models who kind of started coming into the picture, but it really was there was no one to really kind of quote unquote like look up to or feel represented by. So of course you're kind of like programmed to want to be whatever's being sold to you at such a young and influential age. So I think right now what's really great and what's really beautiful is that Gen Z, Gen X, Gen Z, and Gen Y millennials really feel like, you know, being of mixed culture and celebrating diversity is just like the norm. It's every day. They're not even questioning it. And if anything, maybe like I've been in media for a long time, but like the last 5 to 8 years, we were really having conversations, like pointed conversations about who was on the covers, who was represented in the pages of the magazines that I was working at. And, you know, there was intention to have a more inclusive conversation. I think it's really ramped up in the last like 3 to 5 years. And, you know, there is no kind of like, or rarely is there like a campaign or a runway show or a film or a hit TV show that doesn't have diversity. So that, you know, we've come a long way in a fairly short period of time. And I think that, you know, changes how the younger generation is certainly represented and feels about themselves. And, you know, I think one of the great kind of films of our time and books of our time is Crazy Rich Asians. Like, you know, it was that moment where you could see Asian people in like a comedic setting that was very
well. There was one before that. There was Joy Luck Club. I don't know.
Yes, there was Joy Luck Club, but that was like, what was that, like 20 years prior? I mean, when Joy Luck Club came out, I don't think I understood the cultural significance of it as much, obviously, as I did now, you know, years later as an adult. And everyone felt really old at the time. You know, you talk to someone who's
but the interesting in media is that I know you've been in the media for a long time and you write about it. And as an Asian woman in the media working behind the scenes, do you feel like there's more responsibility on your part to push that as part of your DNA, part of your agenda, to make sure Asian women's voice are being heard and the subject matter you put forward should be targeted to those audience?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's for Asian people to be represented, but really, like, I think there's like a beauty and diversity of all backgrounds and all kind of ethnicities, and you know, that's definitely the way things are going. God, I'm really sweaty. It's hot in here.
You look good. But you know, I've been in the fashion industry for 15, 17 years, something like that. And I have seen the growth and progressions that you're talking about, that the fact that we do see more Asian faces, we see diversity and whatnot. But it wasn't an easy pivot. It wasn't an easy change. And to me, it wasn't gradual. To me, it has always been, this is some kind of controversy and people raising role. You need more Asian in movies, and then we'll start hiring Asian people. You need more Black people on the red carpet. All of a sudden, every host at the Oscar were Black people. And I feel like it's not organic, and it's always has to be a drama around it in order to make noises. And I think a lot of it has to do with that as the Asian community, we don't connect together and celebrate each other enough. I think the competition within itself, because I know growing up, just because you're Asian doesn't mean I want to be your friend. If you're not Chinese, all of a sudden, oh, we're not in the same group, right? Oh, you're Korean. Oh, you belong with that group.
No, it's very segregated within the community. But I think, you know, that also happens in like the Latin American community. It is, you know, from different backgrounds, and it can feel a little bit separate. Like the language is sometimes a little bit different. I think you're right. Like it feels very separate. I think that also by nature, you know, Asian people are kind of just a little bit like quieter in terms of like their national pride, like outside of their countries. Like when they come here, it's just like, okay, we just want to like put our heads down and quietly do our thing and be successful, but like not make a lot of noise about it. And I think that it wasn't until very recently that has really changed. So you're right. Like it kind of, it's like something controversial happens to make a big deal out of it. And then everyone's kind of like, yeah, like, okay, he said that, so I feel good about getting behind it as well. But it's not by nature something that that has, you know, always been, I think, a priority, because I think the priority was like being here, the values of a lot. I don't want to stereotype, but I'm kind of stereotyping here, but like the values of a lot of Asian people are like, come here, work hard, you know, be successful, but don't make a lot of noise around it. So culturally, I think, you know, if you think about like the Latin community, they're very much they're much more vocal in terms of like celebrating successes. And I think that the Asian community isn't as vocal about it.
But that's because I don't think we have a pop star, an Asian pop star that's making those noises for us, right? We're not the opportunity is not there. You know, we had the Jackie Chan's and that lasted two movies, and all of a sudden when he's not on anymore, then it's like, oh, we don't celebrate the Asian community anymore. I feel like we're responsible. I'm responsible. So in the world of photography, I always felt like, okay, if I can push to have Asian models by choice, I want to make sure I do that, and not just because I'm Asian. I do feel like it's because it's such a geographically such a huge area that's
Yeah.
completely
No.
underrepresented in a world conversation. It and Mandarin is the number one language like the largest language of population
Yeah.
people speak. And so for me, I didn't realize that the importance of that until I got much older, right? And when I got older, I was like, oh wait, being Asian is okay. And I'm opposite of the people who said, okay, put your head down and work quietly and don't make noise. I'm one of those people who stands up and make as much noise as I can, so I can be recognized at what I do. And you know, the two methods, like people are quiet and just work hard and be successful. I never follow that way. I feel like if I'm quiet, nobody's gonna notice me in the room. And in fact, I want to be noticed. So it's completely opposite how I was in an adolescent, right? You want to
Right.
disappear, you want to hide, you just want to kind of hide behind whoever that will block you, but you don't get picked on. And now, like I'm in the opposite place where I feel like if you don't make noise and you don't talk about making noises, nobody's gonna pay attention to you because there's so much noise out there in the digital world.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think that I'm sometimes a little bit conflicted in that sense. Like, in a way, like I'm very much an introvert, like by nature. So like I'm a super shy kid, didn't want to be in front of anything. Not that I didn't have an opinion about things, but I just didn't necessarily want to be the person in like the front of the room screaming about that opinion. And over time, just as you kind of like go through this curve. It's like in the beginning of your career, you're like, I'm awesome. Like I'm going to do all of these things, and you build that up. And then there comes a point where you're like, okay, what am I doing now? And social media has obviously changed the landscape for everyone. I think what's wonderful about it allows everyone else to be heard. Like especially in the fashion industry, it is very elitist in a way, and everything was very it was very edited. So like the kind of more powerful, louder voices, not always the louder voices, but like the more powerful voices got heard. And now, social media has obviously changed that landscape. But being someone who's quite introverted, like sometimes I find it, like I'm like, am I oversharing? I question things. So, you have people who are just really great at putting everything out there. And I feel like sometimes I'll put something out there and I'll be like, oh no, I need to pull it back. But I think, that's also part of the reason, like I in the world I'm in, like in the media world, in the storytelling world, like, yes, there are moments where you have, where you tell your own story. There's a first person, there's like, a great, there's great enjoyment in telling your own personal story, but a lot of it is also us being back here telling other people's stories, and stories for brands, stories for individuals, and whether that's through words or whether that's through pictures. Like we're kind of behind the scenes a little bit, like orchestrating things.
Well, I
And
do. I mean, we've
yeah.
seen that, right? We've seen the behind the scenes start to change. We see that Aya is now a Japanese. He's the editor in chief of Marie Claire magazine, and just by the sheer fact that she's Asian American and being in that position, I feel like okay. And yes, I worked with her all these years, and I've worked with you over the years. But I feel like okay, if she could do it, somebody else is watching and know they can do it. And I do feel that responsibility because I know I turn on television trying to look for people who look like me or attitude. It's not just skin color, right? Just the background, like coming from a different place and work really hard. You want this American dream and break through. And we need that. We need somebody like her who is in editor-in-chief position in a Western magazine holding that position. That to me it's the most amazing example for young girls out there to
Oh yeah,
watch.
I mean, I think you just have to. Everyone, like including like big media, you have to walk the walk. And I think that what's really great. I worked as the beauty and health director at Marie Claire like 10 years ago, and in fact, I don't know if we've shared this, but like we did shoots together, but for Marie Claire way back then. And part of the reason, maybe you said this already, but part of the reason we're reconnecting here is because we did a talk together at the Annenberg Center in Los Angeles about Asian models in fashion.
Well, you were
evolution.
way ahead of your time, actually, because this is 10 years ago when inclusion wasn't really spoke of. And in fact, we didn't really get to work together in a face-to-face because you were writing the stories and articles, and I was hired to shoot the photography. And I didn't even know that I was working with an Asian beauty director at the time because we show
Yeah,
up.
we went on that one trip together. We
Yeah.
did that one shoot,
And
like a couple shoots together when
in Florida,
Miami. But yeah,
in Miami, in pouring rain. And we still made it look
yes.
shiny. We made
Yes,
it look
you
like
really
it
got that,
glowed.
captured that golden light with that dish.
We did. And
Yeah,
then it
we
was, for me, that was an amazing moment because shooting for Mary Claire for US edition, it was like, wow, okay, I'm walking and climbing the ladder where to get to what's the next moment for my career. It was so important for me because at the time I was shooting for so many international editions. And you always want to shoot for US edition because that's when you feel like, oh, I made it in
You've
the
made it.
industry.
I mean,
you know?
I think what's evolved a lot, even in like since my time at the magazine then, is of course there was some diversity behind the scenes back then, but honestly, you probably find in media mostly Caucasian editors, 10 or 15 years ago, and then a couple of Asian editors, a couple of Black editors, a couple of Latin editors, and I think now coming back to, so I left Marie Claire. I was the beauty director at Glamour, and then was at Violet Grey, and now I am kind of full circle and back at Hearst, working with Marie Claire and helping out at Harper's Bazaar. And what's changed dramatically is along the way is what's happening behind the scenes. So whether the consumer realizes it, the audience realizes it or not, like it's just much more diverse. Like if you look at the teams and even among the leads at Marie Claire now, of course you have Aya, you have Wani, who's our design director, who's also Chinese. Like it's just a much more diverse lens, and I think that as the diversity conversation in big companies really bubbled up in these last few years, it was very much about being represented in those companies and in having a seat at the table ultimately. Because
and it's not just Asians either. We are seeing that throughout different colors of the spectrum. So people are being hired. Inclusion is definitely now being addressed because whoever is behind that desk making those creative decisions, and whether you're Black, white, whatever color spectrum you're on, what you put forth, it does send that energy forth. It does come with your own perspective and your own heritage in one way or the other. And Annenberg talk, for example, was a perfect example that we didn't know each other well enough. We got to learn about each other actually on stage, right? And the spectrums
you're
of learning
destined
about
to be a star.
Well, I will have to thank you because that was my very first public forum talking about my work.
I don't believe you. You were really good.
About at least about photography. I've done other stuff in other fields, but for photography, that was really the first time that I go, whoa, somebody's going to look at my photography work and we're going to talk about it as a reference. I really had a good time. I mean, I made a fool of myself that day, I think, but it was definitely one of those like, oh, this is kind of fun. And a friend of mine actually called me, who was an editor for a lot of my TV commercials in my previous life doing directing, and she actually called me and said, you need to do that more. Whatever you do, you need to do that more. So 10 years later, here I am doing that more. So
no, it's so great that you're celebrating this celebratory month and actually bringing people together. It's such a great roster this week, and
thank you so much. It means a lot
having these conversations. I think just in terms of like the world's eye, it's just changing. Like the more you look at people and think about like of different backgrounds and think that they're beautiful, like that just changes people's tastes and people's views on things. So it just opens up the conversation, and that's certainly something we want to actively do in anything that we're putting out there. You get enough people like looking at things and you're like, okay, yes, like we don't need every Black model or every Asian model to have very Caucasian features, because ultimately that is also something that's changed, I think, a lot. Like go back 15, 20 years, there were a few Black models and a few Asian models, but a lot of them were chosen because they had quite
more Western features. Yeah,
quite classic Western features.
Absolutely. Well, what's interesting about the roster I try to put together now and having you here, have Kathleen here yesterday, and then Lisa Ling tomorrow, is that I love talking
What
to
are you
people
and
from
Lisa
different.
going to talk about? I mean, I
Well,
won't talk about it, but
well, what I was saying is that I wanted her because she's come from a different generation, and everybody from different generation of Asian culture brings a different attributes of their point of view. And Lisa has been a journalist since she's 16 years old, and I've watched her since she was 16 years old with Anderson Cooper. Actually, if you guys, they were actually on the show together at 16, delivering news for China One, and I remember that, and I watched, and there were two people. I go, I can be them combined. Can I be combined of those two people?
right.
And then until this day, I still admire both of them because incredible thing they're doing in journalism. But Lisa, I just love how inquisitive she is, and I want to really learn from her journey. All these shows that she does for CNN and all the she left the talk so she can really
Mhm.
pursue what she cares about, and that's such a powerful moment when she did that. So I want to learn what gives her the courage to be Lisa Ling because she's unique in so many ways. At the same time, she has influenced so many of Asian people out there, and then we have chefs like Nikki, who has a NACA Michelin chef, who, like
Mhm.
you said, stay quiet, bow your head down, work really hard, and you'll be successful. She's that person, and I think Lisa is on the opposite. She speaks loudly. She pronounces every syllable when she talks to you. She's a completely different spectrum of Asian heritage, and I think that's what's going to be interesting to talk to her.
Yeah, to hear all these different backgrounds, and really, I think what it is right now culturally too. Obviously, there's a lot of like xenophobia, and there's a lot happening right now that is unique to this particular that is being brought up uniquely because of the specific time, but just how the Asian people aren't like it's not black and white. Like to really articulate the textures and the opinions and the styles within, I think is a really great thing that you're doing.
Well, thank you. And because of this month of celebration, I realized my responsibility cannot end just because the celebratory month is over. So I'm making myself responsible to make sure that I too have inclusion every week, that I can have an Asian person who come on in different fields and speak of their work. And just because they're Asian, so they can talk about their stories. But we'll continue our celebration. And
Yeah,
I just
it's
found out today Margaret Cho is going to be on in 2 weeks, so that's going to
oh,
be a fun one.
have you had I think one of the other great comedians right now, Aquafina. Have you had her?
I reached out to her yesterday. So the process of reaching out to people during this time
Mhm.
is very, very difficult because everybody's going through their pandemic in a very different pace. Some people
Of
actually
course.
keep themselves very busy. Some people are like, I don't want to talk to you right now, but maybe a week from now, check in with me. And I have a lot of that. And I'm learning about that along the way to be patient and when the timing's right. And these talk what I'm doing now, I'm not calling CAA or ICM or WME, I'm reaching out to them directly like, hey,
Oh,
take a look at.
totally. I think it's such a great time to have these like intimate conversations. Of course, like this is broadcast to anyone who wants to watch, but to have these intimate conversations and to really connect with people when you can't reach out and touch them. It's been interesting to see, like, I've been doing meetings and whatnot, and who wants to get on Zoom and who wants to do a phone call. I was doing an interview with Mark Jacobs, and his team was like, he wants to do a Zoom. I'm like, great. And it's just a lot of fun. It's something that you might not normally do. It's like
I actually find it very difficult now just talking to people on the phone. I want to see their faces. I remember I was like, when you're ready, FaceTime me. I never go, when you're ready, call me. Because people can call you anytime. They can be doing something. I'm on, no, no, no. I want you FaceTime me because I want to see you. I want to connect with you. I want to know that you're here and you're present. And that's so important to me. And that's how this talk has kind of evolved. That from the very beginning of the show, it was really about the hair and makeup community that I work with in the industry. And I wanted to celebrate their work. And I started by encourage them to go online and talk to people. A lot of them were shy. A lot of them are like, this is not what we do. But now a lot of them are doing it. It makes me so happy to see they allow themselves to share, and
You could
and as you
definitely
know,
do one, or you could have like a makeup uh, tutorial for Asian makeup, for like Asian eyes. You could definitely go there.
I'm not going to be the one teaching it.
You don't have to teach it,
I
but
can
I
barely
think
put
that's like an
eyebrows on
interesting.
myself every day. Eyebrows my big challenge. I have no eyebrows, so these are painted in every day. Today's not a good day.
They're painted. You've done them.
Well, they colored in. This one's better than this one. Some days I just leave them
What's
out and have no eyebrows. Oh
what's
wow.
your product?
These are actually Fiona's style. She gave me these makeup coloring for brow makeup. A little brush. It's like I'm
She's a good
painting all
one.
over again. But I love hearing that the industry is evolving and it's changing. And what I hear from so many of the guests that I talk about is that it's not something that I feel like you have to force anymore. It's becoming an everyday vocabulary.
Yeah, I think that it's part of the conversation, and also again, like to your point, there are a lot of there are more artists, there are more hairstylists, there are more a lot of nail artists, but a lot of makeup artists, and more photographers who are of Asian descent. And
Yes.
you're just bringing a different context and a different lens to things, and that's going to change the visual conversation.
And we know this that we see that all these magazines hire different type of group of photographer, and then curating those photographers to shoot for those magazines, it brings complete different voice and point of view. And we talked this offline before, that I think the landscape changed with fashion, especially Asian point of view, when China Vogue published. When
Mm-hmm.
China Vogue hit the market, it hit the market with a storm. It's all of a sudden you had to pay attention to an Asian publication, and the way Angelica have curated the magazine is very Western in a way that I was very confused in the beginning. I'm sometimes still very confused. I'm like, is this magazine for America or this magazine for the Asian audience? So that balance, I feel like we're still trying to find.
I think we're still tinkering with that balance, and I think that with China having being obviously such this great force and such this huge economy, like it obviously has incredible influence over what's happening, from a business perspective, and the luxury world in China is obviously really, really new. So they had to learn how to produce luxury, how to talk about luxury to their new consumers in a way that they didn't have experience with. So I feel like there's a lot of experimentation with everything that happened here, but just kind of in fast forward. Like, do we and what does that conversation look like from like print to digital? Everything's kind of fast forwarded in China. You could see a little bit what was happening in Japan and take some cues from there, but Japan and China are completely different markets.
Right.
Singapore and China are completely different markets. But I think that it was, I think, sitting where I sit and looking at this publication, you would think that they would only have Chinese models. Like this country of how many people are looking at Western models, but I think they wanted to bring themselves up to this level of luxury that was kind of this global idea of luxury. And in this fashion world, there are certain photographers, there are certain models, there are certain designers who are part of this circle. So at the time, even when it launched, that circle is really small. It's opened up, and it's diversified a lot. And even if you think about like the number of American designers who are now of Asian descent, it's just it's a constantly evolving conversation. And I think looking at that magazine and looking at some of the other Asian publications, like their cover subjects have evolved a lot. If you think about Korea and the popularity of K-dramas and K-pop and Korean and K-beauty, like that all informs what is happening. That's now informing what's happening in Western culture. So there's a little bit of a flip, but I don't think, now that we're such like a global culture, it's never going to be perfectly black and white. Like it wouldn't, I almost think that now it doesn't make sense to have only Chinese models on something like a Vogue China, because it is like part of a global conversation now. Although I think, obviously representation is super important.
Absolutely. And it's interesting during this time, because as you know, I work with a lot of different Asian publications from Singapore to Thailand and different areas out there.
And they're also different. they
They're
want.
very different. The approach is very different. But what's very interesting now, when I talk to them about September covers or the new covers that are coming out, we're hoping we can shoot them soon, is that they're celebrating the local heroes more than anything.
Right.
They want to put their own skin color. It doesn't matter if you're Gigi Hadid or Bella Hadid. They're going to celebrate their version of Gigi Hadid and in their region. I think that is so important. And one of the magazine I respect the most is Thailand Vogue. And the editor-in-chief and I are good friends, and we worked together for many years. But his approach to his magazine truly, I think, is so amazing that he wanted to have a Western flair, a global flair, I should say, not a Western flair, but a global flair. He puts Western models on there, European models. But he makes sure that there's X amount of pages absolutely dedicated to the audience of his own culture, Thai, and then X amount of covers a year will be Thai models or Thai celebrities. I think that is important because I don't think you should lose your essence of who you are. So when he began to work that way and started coming to the US to shoot, I done a couple of shoots with him. And he actually asked me, he says, can I have my photography crew to come and watch you work? So he can learn how they do production in America. Not necessarily how I shoot, but how we get the stylists, how do we get clothes, how do we produce all the nitty-gritties.
Of a certain caliber.
Yeah, and they were here for 3 or 4 of my shoots. And after, they went off and back to Thailand and started producing quality shoes like we would do here in a different way. I shouldn't say quality, but in the way they wanted to.
I mean, I think that's also, you have a very generous spirit, and a lot of photographers wouldn't allow a foreign crew or any crew that is not their own come into their set to observe. I think that is part of their signature and their art, and they're not necessarily willing to share. I mean, I think what you're doing is generous and will allow other people to flourish because they're not going to steal your eye. But
I don't think you can. I don't think you can. That's why I talked to other photographers before, and I agree with you. So I think, especially in the internet world now, with the Instagram, with all these platforms, and all the behind the scenes, have not people figured out yet? It's beauty lies a beauty light, guys. Natural light's a natural light. There's no some secret that what we do as photographers to manipulate that light. Herb Ritts taught me one thing, that there's only one sun in this world. Know where that sun is and capture that sun the best way you know how. And if you're in a studio, imagine there's one sun in this world. Make that light work like a sun. So I work in that way. I work in a classical way. I don't throw up 20 lights and trying to figure it out. But with all these behind the scene videos and the stuff, I think the consumer get to see, and then people who love fashion and photography get to see that the secret is not in a technical. I'm sorry. The secret is in what's in here. It's what you study, what you're influenced by. And you can go home and try to copy all you want. And we all done that, right?
You're definitely never going to copy it. I think that, there are, especially now, like on Instagram, there are a lot of people you see who have a really great eye, but don't necessarily have like the technical know-how, and then vice versa. You have a lot of people who have.
But I actually believe technical can be learned. Technical can be taught. You can hire a technical team, but you don't have the eye for it. Sure. That's the problem, right? And that truly is.
Well, it's like teaching someone good taste. It's really a hard thing.
Couldn't say it better. You cannot teach good taste.
It can be of a certain quality or of a certain expense, but it's kind of subjective in terms of is it good or not.
So in terms of work, how do you progress now? How does it work now? Are you still doing? Are you interviewing people? Are you writing? What kind of content do you contribute?
Right now, I work with Aya, and I'm working with the Harper's Bazaar team as well, and working on the beauty content for both. And it's part of some of what I was doing, back when I was at magazines before. It's just like forming the lineups, assigning and editing the stories, meeting with brands, vetting what's out there, and figuring out what feels relevant for your brand, and filtering those stories and working with your teams to really give the audience something that's interesting and compelling and unique to that brand.
But what is unique now during this period? Because we see so many people online now doing skincare, tutorial, hair and makeup.
Well,
what do you do to cut through all that noise for publication?
I think that there's a really interesting moment. And I mean, this has been evolving for a long time, but the whole idea between the influencer community and the expert community. You know, and this is something that we looked at Violet Grey too, where it was very much about the expert community. It was we're celebrating the artists, like, you know, the hairstylists and the makeup artists. Like, those are my gods. Like, they are setting the tone and creating what is deemed beautiful, and, you know, they're you know, artists. And then the influencer community, who is really good at translating some of those looks, really good at engaging and relating to the audience. And I think that what we're seeing right now is a little bit of a shift. And, you know, I think a lot of the hairstylists and makeup artists, like you said, they're not as comfortable in front of the camera. They don't necessarily want to be in front of the camera, but they have such incredible knowledge. And when you talk to them, or when you talk to, you know, someone like a perfumer who will never be a social media star, but has like such incredible knowledge to share, you can really learn so much from them. So I think collectively, like, talking to a lot of them, and what's been interesting now is, like, they're not working in the way that they were. They're at home like the rest of us, and we're all kind of in this together, which feels super relatable. But it's also been a nice opportunity for me to just be like texting with them and calling them, whereas, like, usually if I would try to text or call someone, especially of a certain caliber and who's really busy, they would be on set and they'd be like, call you back. And then, you know, like 2 days later, they call me back. We're having these like daily conversations. So I feel like I'm learning a lot from this really like elite group in terms of like beauty information, which as an editor is really exciting. And I also think that, you know, just being able to, everyone's online, everyone's on their phone. So just be able to like see that collective shift of like where we're going with, okay, are we all breaking, like, you know, kind of superficial things, but not so superficial things, like, oh my God, everyone is breaking out. What do we do now? We all have to wear masks. What are we going to do now? Is it going to make, you know, makeup sales plummet? Is it going to really hike skincare sales up? I mean, yes and yes. Like, I think what you're seeing is there's a divide. Like, makeup sales have definitely declined. And yes, I put some on today, but most days I don't have a lot on, but I am taking care of my skin. And I think that, you know, is a common narrative with a lot of people right now. So that at the same time is this trend that's been happening in the beauty industry for a while now. So like skincare has been kind of on the up for, you know, a couple years now. Tools.
But I would think the beauty brand would capitalize on eyebrows and eyes right now, because we're wearing masks.
That's the conversation now. Like, that's the conversation now. Like, once everyone's out of isolation, going back, like integrating, you know, masks are definitely going to be part of the conversation. So like, is it all about eye makeup? Probably. But will people still want, you know, a lip product? You know, historically in downturns, like lipstick sales have always gone up because it's like that entry level kind of emotional purchase that you can make that isn't, you know, you can buy it into a designer aesthetic without investing thousands of dollars. You can spend $50 or $30. And I think right now everyone's thinking, and, you know, if I had the answer, I could be a very rich person. Like, every beauty company is trying to figure out, like, okay, are we pulling the plug on all of our lip launches for the fall, and we're just focusing on eyes and we're just focusing on skincare? Some of them are doing that. Some of them have had to put stuff on hold because of production issues, you know, fragrance and production issues. We did a poll for across the fashion group at Hearst, which is Marie Claire, Harper's Bazaar, and Elle, and talked to about just over 2,000 women. And, you know, one of the things that was really interesting is that about 60% of them were still wearing fragrance every day. So I think that's a really promising thing. Obviously, people aren't buying as much right now, especially with fragrance, because it's very hard to test something when you don't actually smell it. It's such an emotional purchase. But I think like the beauty industry ultimately will come out fine. And certain things that we're seeing are really like popping right now, and treatment and hair care and hair. I mean, everyone's freaking out about their hair color and dialing their stylist dollars for tutorials. And, you know, some of them are available, which is really nice.
Right.
You can't necessarily get, you know, direct advice from Chris McMillan on a regular day, but you can now, maybe, So it's been an interesting time. Like it's also just forced a lot of people to kind of get into a space where they were maybe not as comfortable with, or even like if you look at big retailers, they weren't as equipped to do some of the digital stuff and the e-com stuff.
Right.
But it's forced, this time has forced them to do it. So and if you look at the fashion industry and the ever increasing calendar, everyone's kind of, all the designers have kind of come out and said that they need to reevaluate their seasons and scale back. And I think the pace at which everyone was working was really hard. So now it's like this moment of reflection in fashion, in beauty. We're like way off topic here, but
no, this is perfect.
It's just,
but also for me, I think it's actually a time that we as consumers, for me, I never met Marc Jacob. I never been invited to his show, but yet I can get online and watch him on live and talking to Naomi Campbell. And it's like you actually that accessibility, that relatability. I think the silver lining in this business, the fact that you're forcing the people who are usually in the elite of our elite in their own head think that they have to stay there because they're elitist, and therefore people like them because they're elitist. They're learning that actually that's not the case. We're chasing after you because we want to get to know you like your next door friend, your best friend of ours, that you're going to advise us what lipstick to wear, or you're going to advise us what shirt to wear on a personal level. The power of that is showing through right now. I think the people who reach out to people, and not just in the beauty and fashion industry, in the food industry, I talk to so many people in the food industry that for them to get on
so relatable. I mean, everyone thinks that they can make a great sourdough starter.
Oh my God, it's so popular right now.
Yeah.
It's so popular. But that's what I mean. But I guess in the spectrum of this pandemic, it really is a reset button for a lot of us. And I know a lot of business owners are hurting from it. Food industry people especially. 75% of mom and pop shop may not come back. But I do know that if we can, as a community, continue to celebrate each other in a way of bring awareness to it. And that's part of the reason for Let's Talk. We keep bringing awareness to go out and order food. I know you can cook at home, but if you want that restaurant to stay open when we become the new normal, you got to put in your investment now, right? That's what we're doing. And same thing with beauty products or anything that we're doing. I know when early on during the pandemic, first thing I saw was Hearst Spain said free subscription so you can stay home and read with us. I thought that was brilliant. Like, capture the audience. They know people are going to stay home, and they're going to feed them information for people who normally don't want to pay whatever monthly subscription may be. Right. Has that access now. And I hope that this pandemic teach all of us accessibility is important, and relatability is important, kindness is important, and that's what we need. If we can learn that, it's not too bad.
Yeah, I think a lot of people have really come to realize, they enjoy some of the stuff that they were kind of guarded from before, and that, I don't think anything will go back to how it was. It'll go back to a kind of altered state of how it was, but people will have a different perspective and, a shifted sense of priorities for moving forward.
And also in the fashion industry, we start people, we know, I talked to other designers who are like, okay, we're going to be more sustainable. We got to think about how we get our material in a more sustainable way, because it's a trickle down effect on our economy.
It's definitely pushed the digital conversation. It's pushed the sustainability and, purpose conversation for a lot of brands. And I think that people are still obviously consuming things, but the brands that are doing really well right now are the ones who are using this time to entertain and connect with their customers. It's not about selling something, doing a hard sell on things. Like, yes, we will ultimately buy the things that we want, and you need to tell us about them. Of course, and we think about that as we're putting together our stories on the media side too. It's like, we want you to know that, we're going through this with you, and it really is about community, finding your people, speaking to your people, and whether that's just connecting to family or friends that you haven't in a long time because everyone's busy, and or building an audience that you weren't able to do before. But I think what's interesting in the brand side is that every brand realizes like now they all want to be direct to consumer brands, and it's like frantic, you know, rethinking of their strategies so that they have a safety net like that, because the ones that obviously have a really strong e-commerce capacity right now are faring better than others.
And I do hope brick and mortar doesn't go away, because we do still love enjoying the experience of walking into a store like Barney's, and I know, just be able to live the fantasy in a way, because fashion truly is about fantasy, and we love it, and I hope that we don't all end up just ordering by one click on Amazon or online shopping.
No, I think it has to exist. There was an interview, I think, with Leonard Lauder. He has his book coming out in the fall, but he's obviously a really big believer of retail, and I think I don't remember the exact quote, but he alluded to the idea that it's always been about entertainment, like buying the retail experience, the in-store experience. The ones who win and have always won have been great entertainers. It's not about selling things. I mean, yes, you're there to service someone and you're there to entertain them. So I think that rings true for media as well. Like, we're here to entertain and inform. And yes, you will ultimately buy things. We will help you buy things. We will vet things for you. But if you're not entertained right now, like, you're not there. You're not showing up.
Well, I think the beauty industry is not going anywhere, because we know how impactful and how powerful it is for the women and men who put on makeup that help make them feel from inside out how beautiful they feel. And whether or not just on the eyebrow or the eyes, if we have to wear a mask for a while, I still think it's going to be pretty powerful messaging how you translate just from here forward. And I think that's okay. And I have high hopes for our beauty industry. And just by watching, like you said, the hairstylists out there teaching everybody how to do a Jennifer Aniston haircut, or recreating of a red carpet moment and all that. And I think we have found a place that we could have never found without the pandemic, and that is that connectivity, humbleness, and wanting to share your knowledge. Because I can tell you, 5 years ago, I don't believe some of these elitist makeup and hair people would ever be online to show us a trick unless you're paying for it. So now, guys out there are tons of master classes out there for free. So take advantage of it.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think, to their defense a little bit, I will say, like some of the really top guys, it's not that they didn't they were like being super protective. I think that a lot of them kind of shy and like don't want to put themselves out there, like, and they're, that ultimately a lot of is the delineation often between like someone who turns into more of like a celebrity themselves and someone who's more behind the scenes. I'm saying this obviously from my personal point of view too, but I see it in a lot of the artists,
of course,
and photographers and whatnot that
and there are tons of that. When I curate my list every day, every week, and it's the hardest job I've ever done in my life is curating the list of guests come on the show. And I get no's, and you're right, most of the no's is I don't feel comfortable talking about my work, especially photographers. I really want to curate a week of photographer just come on and talk about their work.
Some great female photographers.
Yes, that was amazing. I might do another one because I loved it. I love the point of view. I love learning from them. But when I ask for male photographers, a lot of them are just like, I don't want to talk about my work.
Who wouldn't want? I know a lot of great male photographers who wouldn't necessarily want to talk about their own work.
Wow. I wish they would, because I love to hear this story, because what they do inspire me. I do have Inez Vanu's schedule in 2 weeks to come on to talk about her work, and she's such an inspiration to me. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah, she'll have some, I think, really interesting. I'm sure she'll have some really interesting insights, and also in terms of like how she's may be starting to work again. We're behind the scenes. We're definitely having those conversations now of like how do you safely start shooting again? How do you get people together, in
and it's funny you said that, because I'm having a conversation with Alex Campbell today, and we're actually going to talk about this offline. I hope that she can come on here with me and actually share some of the knowledge that she's been putting together. I know she's been working diligently with different photographers and trying to figure out how to bring content to everyone out there.
I was on a Zoom call with her just earlier today talking about this exact thing. So hopefully we'll have news to share soon.
Absolutely. Maybe perhaps we can work together on that project. I will be talking to her later today offline.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being with me here today. And thank you for your time. And thank you for being Asian American, inspiring other Asian American women and men out there. Because a lot of people don't realize that all the work that you see in magazines, that every page you turn, there's a lot of heroes behind it making it happen. And through this difficult time, you're still doing it. And beauty is something that we so desperately need at all times, whether it's skincare or just simply knowing how to do your eyebrows so you feel good for the day. It's not going anywhere. And for you guys out there, support.
Thank you. And you said that is, such a nice ending. And you also have incredible timing, because I hear small children screaming down. So thank you so much for having me on, and really just for celebrating this time and having these conversations.
And we'll keep celebrating, because it's not just 1 month and not 1 day we should celebrate our heritage, and that goes for everyone, every spectrum of colors.
It really makes you think, like, okay, we're taking this time to celebrate right now, but it's really, it's a 365-day situation.
Thank you so much.
Goodbye.